The following segment is sponsored by Daniel A. White and Associates. It does not necessarily reflect the views of WDEL or Forever Media.
Stay up to date. Keep it here for Delaware's afternoon news starting at 2. Now, back to the Rick Jensen Show on WDEL.
On the phone with the Wednesday after the 1:30 news tip. How's that for a long title? Maybe I should shorten that. Andrew Wood, Dan White and Associates. He's one of the many trusted and brilliant financial planners at Dan White and Associates, focusing on retirement income. Hey, Andrew, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Rick. How are you doing?
Doing well. We were worried about the sound of the headset or the speakerphone beforehand. Whatever you have right now sounds pretty good.
Wonderful.
If you're using the speaker, just don't go walking around the office and
don't worry, I won't do that.
Looking out the window while you're talking and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I saw your email, and I saw this and I thought everything changes all the time with retirement income, and now you write this: Roth 401ks are no longer subject to minimum distributions, required minimum distributions. I'm thinking, I thought they changed everything, Andrew, so the government gets more of your money sooner. In other words, you get an inherited IRA, for example, and you have to empty that thing out in 10 years so the government gets the money. What's going on with this?
Sure. So this was always kind of a mystery to me, specifically regarding Roth 401ks. Do not confuse or mix up Roth 401ks with Roth IRAs. Okay, so
Why?
the Roth 401k is typically with your prior employer.
Yeah.
Roth IRA is an individual account that is outside of your employer. So there is a difference between the two. But this was the mystery was always, well, the government has already received their taxable portion on Roth 401k amounts that have gone in. So, why on earth would they require, the individual to take these required minimum distributions when they hit 70, the requirement minimum distribution age?
Yeah.
Because they're not going to get anything from a tax, standpoint. So, why did it make sense for them to actually have to? So that has actually changed, and this is released in the final and proposed RMD regulations issued July the 18th of 2024. The IRS clarified that there will no longer be required minimum distributions for the Roth 401k amounts as well. So they changed that officially this year. All right. So that's a good thing, at least in my opinion, because, that's typically going to be more, tax deferred. And as long as you meet all the requirements, tax-free growth for those 401k plan holders. So again, they eliminated that. It's going to be treated very similarly to the Roth IRA.
So you remember it was the late, great Senator Bill Roth of Delaware, who actually was instrumental in creating the Roth IRA and then subsequently the Roth 401k. And he was a guy who was very interested in helping people save for retirement and do so in such a way that they wouldn't get screwed too badly by the federal government. I mean, really, that was pretty much his goal. He would be riding the train to D.C. from Wilmington and working on these programs, and he'd get there, make phone calls, and consult with folks, and again, working more on the train when he came back as well. And to your point, when it's a traditional IRA or 401k, you're retired, you're taking money out, the government wants their money. And when it's an inherited IRA, you have members of the government said, well, we want that money faster, so you have to empty out the account in 10 years, even if you're only 12 years old. And it would be wiser to save it for retirement or something, but nope, you got to take the money out. So you asked the question, why the government would even have any rules for distributions from the Roth 401k accounts when you've already paid taxes before it went in, right? And I know
that's the strange part.
I know you're well studied in this, and I'm going to offer an idea, and you tell me if it's nuts or maybe. So the key here is that our federal government is drowning in debt. Our debt is 123% of our gross domestic product, right? We're drowning in debt, and they keep creating more money, which creates more inflation and more debt. So maybe they created the this rule to get that money out of the account and get it back into the economy. So you would use it by maybe buying something and paying taxes on that, or maybe if people take it out, it might increase their tax bracket and thus have to pay more in federal taxes.
Well, even the distributions from the Roth, portions, the 401k or the IRA, again, as long as they meet the requirements, aren't going to get added to their taxable income. But,
okay.
I look at it as, maybe if they don't spend it, as you had mentioned, or put it back in the economy, then they are likely going to put it into what's called a non-qualified account or an after-tax account, which means they would be taxed on any growth, on the future of that. So, I think you're spot on, though. I mean, when you're looking at it, you're spot on when it comes to, the deficits and the debt that we're in. They're just, even when you look at inherited IRAs currently, they're still going to fall into the requirement where they need to pull money out from those Roth IRAs, even when they're in inherited status, within the first 10 years. And the reason for that is, they can't have a tax-deferred account that's just going to grow, forever tax-deferred and tax-free. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things that they are, I'm sure they're looking at that. They want to get them out of these tax-deferred and tax-free accounts probably as soon as possible.
So they probably have a finance meeting and someone said, by the way, and they did this. I actually have no idea how they go about that, except I just envision you got these bureaucrats working in their cubicles, big thick eyeglasses and pens, and they're trying to figure out how do we get more money out of people.
Right. Yeah. And again, it's about, changing the status of it, the qualification of it sooner, into, something that maybe they can get their hands on quicker. But the only other thing I wanted to point out, and this does have to do with beneficiaries, as you mentioned. So the regulations confirm if the plan participant or the IRA owner dies on or after their RMD age or date, the beneficiary is subject to the 10-year rule payout, and they have to take annual required minimum distributions during the first 10-year period. So they can't let it necessarily defer for the full 10-year period and then take a massive distribution. They're going to have to take required minimum distributions during the first 10 years. That's how I'm interpreting that. So
yeah, but that's only under what condition?
That's if the beneficiary inherits it and the owner, the owner, the deceased person, if they pass after the required minimum distribution age. So 70, right now it's 73.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So again, I think that actually just kind of not proves, but it kind of, alludes to our point earlier that, they want to get these accounts, out of the tax deferred and what would be tax free, as soon as possible.
Makes sense. Well, I mean, and you might be, and I know, we sit here and laugh thinking like, man, we sure don't think very highly of these government bureaucrats. And I'm thinking, well, it's all based upon historical perspective. So these are not illogical questions. Also, you guys do a lot of that work, don't you, in conversions to Roth IRAs from standard IRAs? I got a general question for you, 30,000-foot view. So with that in mind, you're looking at the Fed cutting the interest rate by 0.5 point, which is actually pretty dramatic. Any thoughts on how that's going to affect various different kinds of accounts?
Whew, that's the billion-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you look historically, in terms of the markets, I think that's what you're referring to.
A lot. So it has to do with interest rates for people taking out mortgages. Okay, well, the presumption there is that it'll come down some. Maybe 0.5%, maybe not. And then, on the other hand, you have people who have, for example, money market accounts. There are money market accounts paying anywhere from 4.25% to like a 5.5%, depending upon the institution. And I think I just leave it at those two right there because there are a lot of different possibilities here.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably going to be looking at some alternatives, other than the money markets, if that does happen, depending how far they go down. I mean, just remember 2.5-3 years ago, interest rates were at zero. So, I don't think anyone expected the rates to be as high as they were for that long. But that said, so it's really interesting to see what is going to happen specifically regarding the jobs market. I think that's the concern. So we'll see what happens there in terms of future rate cuts and what that means for the overall economy, depending on where those figures where they end up in the next few weeks here.
One of the worst things you hear from the Federal Reserve is the way they calculate their interest rates and what they need to see for the, quote, market, end quote, to do well. And often they say, well, we need more unemployment. If we can just get more unemployment, then the market will do. And I'm thinking, that's not even the stock market. That's the marketplace overall. And when you have the bean counters saying, well, we need more unemployment in order to improve the market, that's not what people are thinking when they think about how the market is treating them. They look at the market for interest rates, for loans, again, for their money market accounts, for the insured contracts. And I know you guys are very familiar with all of this stuff. They don't want to hear, oh, the Fed says we need to have more unemployment so we can improve the market. And I don't want to hear that either.
No, of course not. I was listening to a congressional hearing. It was probably a year ago, but basically they said that that's actually the goal. Is to tighten up the economy and increase unemployment. Don't quote me on that, but something to that extent. And that's obviously concerning. We don't want to see unemployment numbers continue to tick up, especially with what everyday Americans are dealing with in terms of inflation and things like that. So. Obviously, again, we'll see what happens in the next few weeks here. But they should be stock market, at least, independent from that.
Yeah, there will be some companies that do well. Well, people ask, why is the stock market doing so well, blah, blah, blah. And it's because of those seven ugly sisters. You have these seven big tech companies that have been driving the market so much. And now it looks like NVIDIA is hitting some bumps. And I have no idea what's going to happen with all that because, again, a lot of this has been driven by a very small number of major companies. I don't know. Just maybe just take a softer look at it. Go ahead.
Yeah. Here's what I would tell you, Rick, especially if you're in retirement, close to retirement, or, if you're planning on retiring relatively soon, is, just make sure you have a plan, control what you can control. We can't control any of this stuff, so you got to have a plan in place that is comfortable, that makes you comfortable, and can get you where you need to be regardless of what does happen. Control what you can control, but we got to make sure that we're in a position to protect yourselves and to avoid any undue risk is really what I'm referring to. So have a plan, regardless of what does happen, going forward here with interest rates and everything like that.
Yeah, you guys are great at that too. Dan White and Associates, Andrew Wood, one of the financial planners at Dan White and Associates. So Dan White has his program here on this radio station, 101.7 FM, 1150 AM, as well as streaming at WDEL.com, Sunday mornings at 7, right?
That's right. This Sunday morning, he's going to be talking about Roth conversions and the RMD problem.
Oh, you mean more problems? Great. So, yeah, don't drink too much coffee Sunday morning at 7. Dan White here on WDEL. Andrew Wood, always a pleasure. You can reach Andrew at 888-690-8820, 888-690-8820, and say, hey, I heard you guys talking on Jensen Show. Maybe you got some questions. Thanks, Andrew.
You're welcome. Thanks, Rick.